We are now officially at the halfway point of Daryl Dixon's season 1, and in this third episode, things have started to escalate. This one opens up with Daryl and the gang visiting this nut job to use his radio, but unfortunately he's used it for his own devices, and then he shows us his orchestra of walkers. Now this was pretty unbelievable. It was quite funny to see how inventive they were with the walkers, like we had one attached to an accordion for example, and I can't say I recommend going to see them live, as they did remind me of one of those crazy Wii music sessions back in the day. Daryl says it was a stupid detour and so takes control and says they're going to start doing things his way as they head off to Paris. We get a good view of the city and we can see the Eiffel Tower is looking a little shorter than usual, which we find out later is due to a military helicopter crash. Also in this moment, Isabelle explains to Daryl that most of the city is under the control of Janae and her soldiers. We then hear in the soundtrack a French version of People Are Strange by The Doors as the group come across the grave of Jim Morrison, continuing the musical theme of the episode. And even though it was quite a small moment, I think having a rock star like this being mentioned does a little bit to help, connect our world with the one we're seeing on screen, just to sort of remind us that it is supposed to be the same world. After this, we're introduced to Falou as him and a few of his group approach, with Isabelle explaining who they are and with Falou saying to Laurent that they've waited a long time to see him. He takes the group to their base and we learn that they've been using homing pigeons, but they apparently can take up to a month, so Daryl is like, this is not going to do, so Falou says, if you want to get some information, there are plenty of traders around, but you'll need some currency. Next we see a woman called Sonia, and Falou explains that she recently lost a husband and refuses food or comfort. However, she does hug Laurent, and Falou says that Père Jean was right. Now of course this relates to Laurent being an apparent messiah, so is this perhaps a tease that with Laurent being able to comfort someone who has lost all hope and is ready for death, that he might be able to actually connect with the dead itself, and we might see him be able to control or even stop walkers in their tracks. Speaking of walkers, we catch up with Quinn as he meets with Janae and reveals with Daryl's audio that the American is very much alive. They then head to see the mad professor dude who's experimenting with a walker who is pretty strong and rapid it seems, lasting 18 seconds in their test though, so what result they're trying to hope to achieve from this is yet to be seen. Daryl and Isabelle head to her old place and Daryl finds some pictures of her and Quinn as well as a picture of Lily. But the reason they're there is because Isabelle stashed away some drugs and luxury watches, and that immediately indicates to Daryl that she lived a very different life in the past. I said in my episode 1 review that I was impressed to see that they got Clémence Poésy on board with this show, and I'm already enjoying the chemistry between her character and Daryl. We said last time out that they have their similarities, and here they communicate this, with Isabelle stating with the line,
"Maybe we're the same that way. Broken until the world ended."
Now, I'll come back to this later in the video to that specific line, but she also says that she's happy their paths crossed, and so, there's a clear affection there. After this, they head downstairs and they see the young girl Aimée from last week's flashback stuck as a walker, and with The Walking Dead overall, they do use child walkers sparingly and use them at great moments to have a bigger impact, even all the way back to Sophia, and even right at the start of the show. During this section, we get an action scene with some walkers falling from the apartments above and going splat, but then rising up quickly in a kind of stop motion fashion, leaving Isabelle terrified. Daryl has to use his initiative to take care of the walker, which happens to be another one of those burner type walkers, and we can assume that with these walkers they're probably ones which have been experimented on by Janae's men. Isabelle and Daryl reunite with the group and Falou, and Laurent is absolutely delighted to receive a photograph of his mother. Falou then guides the group through the catacombs where the remains of apparently 6 million lie from the Black Death. We eventually get to the nightclub with Demimon, and you can see that Daryl is really out of his comfort zone in a place of loud music and performers, while Laurent, he's taking it all in. Also, there are a few very brief scenes with Sylvie as she gets close to the character Emile, so I do expect to see that develop in the next episodes. Daryl is more interested in the artwork in this place and gets reminded of home when he looks at Monet's blue water lilies. Soon after, he punches some guy in the face who's wasting his time, and then they run into the head of the joint, who happens to be Quinn.
No way! Yes way!
Meanwhile, Laurent talks to the singer and shows her the picture of his mother. She then gives him her necklace, and from what we find out shortly in the episode, that very well could have been his mother's necklace originally. Quinn takes Daryl and Isabelle to his office, where Quinn learns of Lily's death, and we learn that Quinn is the father of Laurent. Isabelle is clearly shaken up about this revelation regarding Quinn and her sister, and he mentions how he once found Isabelle bleeding in a bathtub and saved her from an attempt on her life. This is where I now refer back to that line from Isabelle earlier, because here Daryl has now seen the scars on her wrists, and in episode 1, when Daryl's in the bath, she learns about Daryl's scars on his back, and so yet again the two share something in common, that being a past of being physically and mentally broken. Quinn implies that it will only help Daryl if Isabelle and Laurent stay with him, but Daryl has seen plenty of men like this in the past and says that he doesn't need a boat that bad. Daryl and Isabelle then clash, and she states that she was wrong about them being the same earlier and stresses that she doesn't need a hero. There's some great acting here, because when Isabelle says about trying to keep her promise, she then says that that's all you care about, isn't it? And you can really feel the anger and the sadness behind that. Over to Laurent, and he tells Sylvie that Sonia, the lady he consoled earlier, said that he made her feel loved. And I gave my prediction for this earlier, but I'm very intrigued to see what direction they take with this. Quinn enters the nightclub looking for Daryl, and then we go back to Daryl and Isabelle as she apologizes for her reaction earlier. Daryl says they no longer need him, and the sadness in Isabelle's voice gets clearer as she says that Laurent will be sad to see him go. Isabelle and Daryl discuss Laurent, including the birth, Quinn, etc., and he overhears and says that he hates them both. Now we can't be sure exactly how much he heard, but I assume we'll get the answer to that question next episode. Quinn spots Daryl and chases after him. They scrap on the rooftop with a thunderstorm going in full flow. Daryl then falls through the roof and the episode ends, quite abruptly I might add. Isabelle is also seen at the end shouting for Laurent, but as we see in the preview for episode 4, he makes his way over to the Eiffel Tower. This episode was the shortest out of the 3, and it was also used as a way to get some characters caught up with the truth. From the looks of the preview for the next episode, it feels like this one has an aura of a part 1 to it, perhaps of our time in the capital, as we know we'll be heading to other locations like Mont Saint-Michel. As a first half of the season, I'm relatively impressed as it offers something different for Walking Dead fans, but like with many shows, and especially ones which have only a handful of episodes, can they stick the landing after serving up a promising start? We shall wait and see. So what were your thoughts on episode 3 and how are you liking the show overall? Also, what are your thoughts on Laurent? What do you think they're going to do with this character? Like I said, I gave my thoughts on what I think might happen, but do you have any ideas? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see another video, on screen is a slight rant for The Expendables 4.